Good morning, everyone. Well, look who's arrived in the Derwent. Finally, after a few frustrating currents and lack of wind, TAPIO has arrived and is slowly making his way towards Kingston Beach. So, and it's daylight, about 4 hours later than we expected, so we've been chuffing around out here for a while, but he's all smiles and happy to be here. So we'll try and, still a bit breezy, having to beat to windward. We're about a mile and a half from Kingston Beach at the moment. You can probably see the barnacles there on the hull. Can you show them barnacles, Jane? Jane's doing the camera, I'm driving the boat. Yeah, there's a massive barnacles there. They're going to slow him down as well, a bit like Uku. But he's happy to be here. Boat's moving quite well, and it's quite cool out here right now. Probably blowing about 15 to 20 knots, maybe 15 knots, and puffs coming through a little bit higher than that. So, sun's been up now for about an hour or something, and we'll come in and see if we can just get a quick grab from TAPIO without hitting his boat. Got one hand on the wheel and whoop, and a puff. So how's it feel to be here, TAPIO? I don't know whether we'll hear that. No, this is hopeless. He can't hear me even. He can't hear me, but that's part of the course, so we'll follow him in. It's very breezy out here now, but good to see him. Good to see him. Boat looks good. TAPIO's rig is incredibly strong. The cap shrouds on his boat are 12 millimeters, 12 millimeter diameter. That's massive for a boat this size. And he's got he's got an outer forestay, you'll notice there, right on the stem of the boat, just to the wire. Just behind that, he's got the first reefing gear, and then his staysail is also on a reefing gear. So he's got lots of combinations and lots of redundancy there. Then there's a baby stay, just going from above the first spreader, going forward, and then he's got two rear lowers, one on each side. So this is rigged a little bit differently, but I've got to say the size of the rigging is massive, and the spar itself is quite strong as well. Interestingly, you can see those marks on the furling gear that on the sail. If you look at the head sails, whoop, we're going to get run down here. I'll go the other side now, just speed up a bit here. He's got black marks there, lines coming back at the end of every extrusion on the furling gear. I don't know whether you can see them, those black lines. The pieces of extrusion are a couple of meters long. When you see that, it suggests that the furling gear sections are actually moving. They're working, they're grinding against each other. That's not a good sign. If I saw that, I'd be thinking, half the world to go with that. I would be certainly having a look at all the joiners there to make sure they aren't moving too much. But that's aluminium paste. So it looks like the wind pilot wind vane's doing its job properly. TAPIO will be happy with that. You may remember he had some problems with it in the beginning, leaving Les Sables d'Olonne, coming down to the Canaries, but it looks like he's sorted that out. Sometimes it's an owner-operator situation, lots of adjustments to be made on the unit, but he hasn't been talking about his wind vane for some time, so it must be working okay. And the water generator, he's got the water generator in at the moment working. It's just on the starboard side there besides the monitor. Sorry, not the monitor, the wind pilot. So that's creating power for him. It's the only thing that's actually generating power on the boat. The engine's not working and the solar panels aren't working either, so that's a very valuable item. It's going to be a little bit tricky for TAPIO. He's got to actually sail up to the anchorage, and fortunately the breeze for that bit's pretty good, but as we get closer the wind will die. We've spent the last few hours hanging out there waiting, and there's not as much wind inside there as there is out here now, but it's nonetheless a perfect way to sail up to a mooring. He's coming from downwind, he'll be sailing upwind to give him a fair bit of flexibility on what he wants to do. So it'll be interesting to see him sail up there. Boat looks pretty good, the hull's nice and shiny, the middle bit of the anti-fouling looks good there. Yeah, it's got quite a lot of barnacles on there, but anyway, they're going to stay there for the next part of the trip. The water's a bit cold, so nothing's going to happen here, and he might try and do something when he goes back out to sea and gets up in the Atlantic or whatever when it's a bit warmer. The water, they go quite a bit higher when they're around the other side of New Zealand, so he may try and dive on the hull when he gets further up there. But certainly that rig looks really good.
You've got your nav lights on. Your nav lights are on. Your navigation lights on.
Might as well help him save some power. So it's yeah, it's every little bit counts in these situations. So the sails look good. There's no stitching flying off anywhere. They don't look as if they're stretched too much, and he's cruising along nicely. Tapio seems happy as on board. He's very a true gentleman in the ocean. He loves the place. He's been down here, did the Whitbread race a long time ago. I think it was the second one in the late 70s or early 80s. I forget which edition he did, but it was one of the very early ones, and he loves it out there. Quite often comments, in fact in the middle of the storm that he just had coming in, on the other side of Tasmania 2 or 3 days ago, he was not talking about the wind and the waves. He was just talking about the amazing sea and the sky and the birds out there. So he was certainly enjoying that. So we might shut down for now and just get organised so that we'll start up again just as he's sailing up to the anchor buoy. He'll have to do that a little bit differently than coming up to it with a motor. He's going to have to sail, but we've set it up so that it's got a floating line there. Ian Johnson from the Kingston Beach Sailing Club has set the anchor up. It's got a floating line along the top. It's quite long with a buoy at the end, so he should be able to sail right along and grab it and get it onto something pretty quickly. So, but it will be an interesting exercise nonetheless. So, he's just closing up his companionway there. It's interesting. If you're watching that, he just he's in his little dome there. I'll catch up to him. That's the Stig little companionway there. You can film that, Jean. He's in his little telephone box, waving. Come up and do a cruise by. Got his walker log there on the back rail as well. So there it goes. He slides it down. I don't know whether you can see that. Right. Yeah, he's got. He's got internal steering lines going to the tiller. Yeah, whoops. I'm trying to steer one-handed here. Yeah, that's pretty cool. He's got the steering lines going inside there, so he can sit there and move the tiller while he's snug inside the boat, and that's pretty secure, even in a rollover or a knockdown or whatever. So, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Very well thought out boat, but I know Tapio's supremely frustrated about many things. Maybe he'll have to come back again in 22 and do it again. But he looks pretty snug there. Yep, there's his steering line. Right, so those lines go to pedals, so he can sit at the back there, and he's got 2 foot pedals, which allows him to adjust those ropes. And that's his version of Matessia's internal steering wheel. That's the way the Finnish do it. So, all very good. So I know this is beyond after work. I think all the people in Finland will be probably trying to stay up to watch a bit of this. So we'll try and we were going to come back later today in the daylight if he arrived at night and do the interview late today. But we'll probably no doubt do it once we get on the pick. Our camera crew, Jesse and Tina, we didn't worry about bringing them on this one because we thought this would be happening 2 o'clock this morning, and then we'd come down in daylight and do it, but it's all changed. They're probably watching this now while they're having their breakfast, so we'll do the film interviews later on. Tapio's planning to stay for about 24 hours. He hasn't had a sleep for a couple of days. Strange that, neither have we. Anyway, he'll sleep today. There's only a few little jobs to do on the boat. And then by the sound of it, or by the look of it, he'll probably get going first light tomorrow morning. So that's his plan. Okay, so we might shut this down, Jane, in a minute. Not quite yet, and we'll come back. It'll probably be back in about 20 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, and start it all again as he's coming up to the buoy, and then we'll do an interview once he comes to the buoy. So we'll see you again very shortly. Thanks a lot.